Hello everybody, this is Brian O'Haron, Planning for Success. This is our last show, 106 straight show, no repeats, and only a few guests. Tonight's guest is Mayor Fracasso of Winsted, Connecticut. Hello Mayor Fracasso, welcome to the politically neutral business program and last program in the series, Planning for Success.
Thank you for inviting me tonight, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'd like the opportunity to answer any questions and express all my views tonight.
Well, I've been asking a lot of people around town about what kind of questions to ask, and that's how I compile this. But I personally am a retired mathematician, systems analyst, business owner, computer and communication company executive, and former chief executive officer and chief operating officer of major companies, some outside of America. As you know, I am an unaffiliated voter, a U, and will vote for any candidate from any affiliation if I think they will help our town in a business-like manner. In the previous election, I backed the Republicans because I agreed with your platform and business candidates, and I disagreed with the platform and business acumen of the opposition. I am impressed by your progress, and I will again vote for the Republican slate and am again recommending the Republican slate to other voters in an attempt to continue the current momentum by providing the necessary continuity that we need to maintain the wonderful progress of the existing Republican-dominated administration.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate those compliments, Brian, and I'm sure that if we are elected next week, that I hope that we will live up to your expectations.
As a lifelong Winsted resident and successful business owner, can you tell us a bit about your background and how you started your successful company and how much it has grown over the years?
Certainly. I was born and raised here in Winsted. My parents were Kay and Tony Fracasso, both of which are deceased now, I'm sorry to say. My father passed away just before the election in 2007. And my mother passed away less than 6 months after that. I was schooled at St. Anthony's School here in town, and I graduated from the Gilbert School. And I worked for a few local companies for a short number of years before I started my own business with one truck, dump truck. I worked for various contractors in the area, and I eventually made a connection at O&G Industries in Torrington, which probably accounts for roughly 80 or 90% of my work to this day. But as I said, I started out with one truck, and we do commercial site work and trucking, nothing residential. But I presently have over 20 trucks, excavators, dozers, loaders, and we work throughout, mainly in the state of Connecticut, but we do truck from New York State, near the Canadian border, as far south as South Carolina, and as far west as Ohio. So we cover quite a large area.
Well, that's pretty good. And people have told me over the last couple of years that your mom and dad would be pretty proud of you, especially your dad, if he were still alive, to see you as mayor and doing such a good job in the town. After 2 years as mayor of the town of Winchester and as a successful businessman, do you believe that the town of Winchester is a business and should be run as a business?
Absolutely. I think there are many coincidental areas. There's you have to deal with employees and union contracts, budgets, all the things that you would find in the commercial sector. There are many parallels that could be drawn between both government, town government, and a business.
Well, Election Day is next Tuesday, November 3rd, 2009, and you are running for another term. I would like to ask you some questions in an attempt to inform our viewers of the Republican success over the last 2 years and the intentions of your team of fellow Republican candidates, Democrat cross-endorsements, and those of the town of Winchester Republican Party for the coming administration.
Well, I'd like to thank the 4 Republicans that decided not to run. I think they did an outstanding job. They worked hard and very conscientiously over the last 2 years. It was definitely a team effort, and I consider the last years to be of great success. Of course, this year, when we put together a new team, we have a strong foundation. We have some people that have run on boards previous. Karen Beadle was on the Board of Selectmen and is presently on the Board of Education. Ray Neal is a Board of Education member presently. He's twice been elected to that position. And he also served on Planning and Zoning for a time. So I think that we have, some real good candidates. We have a couple of newcomers, Glenn Albanesius, very intelligent. He's gotten a lot of rave reviews in the short time that we have been doing some campaigning. And also Mary Shea. And I think that it's a well-rounded group, and I think that we'll do very well.
Okay, before the election, in your platform, you promised to do several things. Can you go over those with us?
Certainly. I think that the very first thing that we took care of was the ill-conceived bond that was totaled $57 million. We felt that it was way too large for the town to handle, and it had a lot of vagueness and ambiguities to it. So that was the first thing that we did, was to get rid of that. We also pledged our support to the golf course and condominium project that was in the planning stages when we came to election. And I think that's a good project. I said that then, and I still stand by that. I think that it would be a great revenue boost to the town, something that we need. We also, on our platform, we're going to promote cooperation between the town and the school leaders in an attempt to save money, and basically to be fiscally responsible, because that's something that's very much needed in this town.
Okay, I seem to remember that big bond issue. The last administration spent about $100,000 just to trying to prepare that bond package, which in the end was not very much use to us at all.
Correct. It was, you're right, it was $100,000 just in the planning.
Do you feel that you have met your objectives?
Yes, very much so. Rome wasn't built in a day, but we have accomplished many things, and there's much more too. There is much more that needs to be progress that needs to be made, and I think our team was very fortunate to have 5 Republicans elected to the board, and that made it somewhat easy for the voting. Although we didn't agree on all the votes that were taken, we did have the strong majority, and that was very helpful for us in accomplishing the things that we wanted to.
Looking back, it was a very wise decision about that $57 million bond package, which included about $13 million in interest, because it saved the taxpayers a very large increase in taxes over a period of 20 years. I think looking back, that was a very wise decision.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. That's why we canceled it. It was the very first thing that we did. After we got elected, the following day, that the elections took place, our first thing was to post a meeting. We had a very short meeting, and we did cancel that. The other thing that we did was replace the school building committee. It was rather large, I believe 13 members. It was unbalanced and politically biased, that we felt. So we lowered it down to 5 members that were very astute and knowledgeable in those areas, and they did an excellent job. We gave them the task of completing the OCR, the Office of Civil Rights complaints that were lodged against the Pearson School that have been hanging over our heads for many years. And they implemented the changes that were necessary. That was the priority. We made that a priority in our platform, and we took care of that. We also gave them a secondary charge to take care of the same situations that exist at Hinsdale and Bachelor School. Our team placed enough money in the budget, despite constant opposition from the minority, to finish the Pearson OCR, and we did that with about half the money that was projected, and we did it in a relatively short period of time, which is to their hard work and perseverance. Approximately 70% of those funds will be repaid by the state. The Pearson work is almost entirely complete now, and the Hinsdale and the Bachelor work is also very close to completion. All this was done despite 6 referendum budgets in a year, in the largest recession since the Greatest Depression, and that occurred about halfway through our administration. And I've said this before, that I firmly believe that this recession, in many ways, is worse than the Great Depression. And the reason I say that is, these days people have credit card debt and big mortgages. This is something that they didn't have during the Great Depression. So I think we still have some tough years ahead of us. And I foresee this upcoming budget year to be extremely tough. And I think we need to hold the line the best that we can on taxes. So we have our work cut out for us. I'd like to get back just for a minute and publicly thank the school building committee members that put so many hours and did such a fine job in completing those projects at the school. And I think that that covers that pretty much.
Okay, and of course we all know that when the recession hit last year, state monies became rationed and local revenues dropped, forcing us to look even closer at the expenditures and use of our 4 schools, proving that sensible business practices win out in the short and long run. The recession has put a strain on our fund balance, and this problem needs to continue to be addressed, and we will be addressing that. Most towns in the area have had a similar problem. We're all in the same boat, so we need to address that. Mayor, will you continue this sensible approach for the other buildings that the bond package was trying to address?
Absolutely. I think that we have a proven track record now. If we take the same approach to the remaining school concerns that we have, along with the fire, police, and the town buildings, I think that we can maintain or continue to have progress each year. And we'll do as much as we possibly can that makes it economically feasible, and as much as the revenues that we have allow us to do so.
Do you think that you have met your campaign promise to support the mostly age-restricted residential developments and golf course in the 600 acres along the Route 8 Enterprise Corridor between Winston and Torrington?
Yes, and I think that we are improving the situation. It was very difficult, and we had some very tough decisions that had to be made to achieve the progress that we have made over the last 2 years. As you know, the town sorely needs additional tax revenue and utility revenues that these developments would represent. And all major town leaders are in favor of this type of developments, if done responsibly. And that's something that I've said right from the get-go. Both potential projects now have passed our land use boards and are awaiting the Army Corps of Engineers and the Department of Environmental Protection approval. They have just received a 1-year extension on their zoning permits a couple nights ago. Shortly after we were elected, the town manager resigned, and we had to find a new town manager that was able to run our town, and we agreed with our town leaders' objectives. We were very fortunate in being able to hire Bruce Grezik from New Hartford as our interim town manager. This proved to be a very wise decision because of his experience as a businessman and his knowledge in local government allowed us to move quickly while seeking a full-time replacement town manager, a process that could take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And because Bruce had so many connections in his government, it made it a very easy transition, and he did a wonderful job for us while he was here.
And then, of course, the second developer sued the town for planning and zoning, improperly denying a permit for the second and smaller project. The developer and the town eventually reached a compromise, and a permit was granted.
Correct. And also, our plan of conservation development that was so long overdue for readoption by the state and the town was something that we inherited, and an ultimatum to finish the plan had to be completed by June of 2010, or we faced severe losses in state funds, such as the STEEP grants. And also the Enterprise Corridor hopefuls that had a need for water and sewer, and still do, to serve their industrial and retail businesses and age-restricted developments that were on the boards for planning. Although we had been led to believe from prior administrations that the POCD was close to being finished, early on in our administration, the Planning and Zoning Chairman and his consultants placed the cost of updating the POCD at between $100,000 and $150,000, and taking many years to complete. Not only did we not have the money we couldn't afford to take that much time to complete this project. So that became a very strong point of contention right from the get-go. We as selectmen had asked the Planning and Zoning Commission to consider an evolutionary approach, as other towns and cities in the state have done, and to produce the badly needed PLCD for adoption by the state, by updating the most urgent portions first and then taking care of the rest of them in years to come. This was something that is going to change constantly, and we didn't need to finish this all in 1 year. So there were some suggestions made and an offer of help from some other areas, but they went unheeded. And after many attempts that were made to convince the Planning and Zoning Chairman, to discuss this matter, it came unacceptable, and we just couldn't afford the way that they wanted to do it. We submitted $15,000 out of the fund to help get this project jump-started. And unfortunately, even after doing this, George Clausen, the Planning and Zoning Chairman, was removed from the Planning and Zoning Board because of his refusal to get this thing started. This, as I stated, was a very, very important part of the work that needs to be done in this town. A new chairman was chosen, and eventually, under their control, another chairman, as our present chairman, James Roberts, has done a fantastic job. We gave him another $15,000 in the following year's budget. We also applied for and received a grant of $25,000 from the state, and almost presently, right now, we are just about complete with this plan finally. And we have done it at less than a third of the estimated cost. I know that we've spent, I think, roughly $37,000 to date, and as I said, this is almost completed. So once again, we have proved that this could be done. The businessman took a business approach. We knew that the town couldn't afford $100,000 or $150,000. We have some very, very good volunteers, very knowledgeable volunteers that took this project on head-on, and they have done an absolutely wonderful job with it. And once again, I would like to thank them for their hard work, especially James Roberts. He wrote several pages of this plan on his own. So we have made great strides there. And in the meantime, the state's required update to the town sewer and water maps has been agreed on and is forwarded to the state in mid-September, and so that will be approved in a timely fashion. And it looks like we will be on time with all this information, and we will not lose any state revenues.
Well, it looks like we made a lot of good progress there, and I'm happy to see that. Is the developer still pursuing the required permits?
Yes, he is. The developer has, after agreeing to some density trade-offs, received his local land use permits and continues to pursue the necessary Department of Environmental Protection as well as the Army Corps of Engineers permission for the larger age-restricted project, which includes a golf course. However, any conditions or trade-offs agreed may require the developer to make another pass through our land use boards. Although things are progressing and we are still some years away from receiving any revenue from these projects, and we can't rely on these projects alone. That's something else that I've stated right all along. We must continue to support the efforts of the Economic Development Commission and other town leaders' efforts to keep existing industrial and retail business and encourage more to come. And we have done that. An example is the Nuclear Dufresne that moved in a couple of years ago. They've already expanded a little bit. We have Coplex, that's the sports domain on Route 800 corridor. They're in the process of erecting a brand new structure. They've done a lot of work down there. And we also have two developers, one that is extremely interested in the knitting mill building to put some apartments on Main Street. And we've also have a lot of interest recently that's come to light on the Colt building at 412 Main Street. So we do have a lot of good things that are on the pike. Hopefully they'll come to fruition sooner than later. The developer for the Aurora project will be responsible for laying the sewer and water lines to his building sites down the Route 800 corridor at an approximate cost of $4 to $5 million. I mean, this is a very expensive commitment. So he's likely, he's not likely to make a hasty decision or a premature decision in these economic times. The progress will be slow, but I still believe that it will come, eventually. And these developments could be a boon to this town. Despite the exceptional progress that the POC since our removal of George Clausen, he's still suing the town, and that, I think, is extremely unfortunate for everyone concerned.
Yeah, I think that's been a very, very, very sad thing for the town, and costly thing for the town. How much has it cost the town to date?
I believe it's been around $60,000, and it's still growing because, as I said, we have not terminated those problems yet.
George Clausen has cost the taxpayers $60,000, and the amount is still climbing?
Yes.
I'd like to tell my listeners that on this program, and I have done for a couple of years, that most people have to earn about 25% or more before taxes to pay $60,000. So that would be a total of $72,000. So these numbers are pretty tough for the taxpayers to stomach. And I've heard a lot of feedback around town that people are not happy with this, and they just as soon not see that kind of cost to the town just because somebody was removed for a commission after many, many years of service.
I'd just like to say, too, to that, Brian, it is extremely unfortunate, but, this is something that was not done in haste. We came into office in November. I attended several meetings with George and Bruce, and Mike Ham sat in on some of them, trying to get this thing jump-started. We gave him money that no other administration had in the past, and we applied for the grant, and we promised him $15,000 more in the following budget, which we did. And once again, we did everything that we said that we would do, and he still refused. And I know he said on his show, one of his shows recently, that we didn't follow the town charter. Well, we absolutely did, and if anyone wants to go to the town hall and look at the charter, it's section 1601. There's the attorneys had to get involved, and the things that he's tried to sue us on have been shot down. I believe there's been 2 or 3 separate ones. He took it to federal court, saying that his civil rights were violated, and that was thrown out of court. He's sought injunctive relief. That was something that would put him back on the board until the trial was over. They threw that out right away. So the 2 or 3 times that he's gone to court, to try to do something, he's lost at every turn. And our lawyers say that he doesn't have a leg to stand on, and it's their thoughts that he'll end up losing this thing as he has so far. But once again, as I said, it's just an unfortunate situation for everyone that's included in this, meaning the taxpayers in town.
One of the questions I have been getting most frequently asked over the last year or so is, did you try, and the other selectmen try to communicate with George before the removal, and try to meet with him and discuss the problems, and try to take a professional approach to this whole?
Absolutely. I mean, as I stated earlier, we attended several meetings in December, and one in particular I remember was December 20th at the town hall, and George had said that he would meet with us on a couple different occasions, Bruce and myself, Bruce Grezik that is, and on all those occasions at the 11th hour he called to cancel the meetings. So it was just, it gets frustrating after a while, time and time again. I mean, I was in town hall every single day, as was Bruce. And, we made ourselves readily available, and we wanted to work with him, and I think that's obvious through, going to the meetings and giving him money, as I stated earlier, that no other past administrations had. So, I think that we did all that we could do. And, unfortunately, a lot of this hasn't come out, but...
It's okay. A lot of this, I know, had to be kept quiet because of the lawsuit, and it's unfortunate. But I think things have progressed, and we've done very well with the decision you made. And I'd like to say to my viewers, as I always say, tough decisions are tough to make, and they're difficult to make, but they have to be made. They have to be made in a timely manner if you're going to be successful. And there's no sense you guys sitting here wasting 2 years of your time, valuable time, away from your businesses. So I think you made the right decision. I'm happy to see it. I'm happy to see the progress. And I'm kind of concerned that Clausen is suing the town and has cost the town taxpayers $60,000, for which they have to earn $72,000 to pay to date. And now he's running for selectman.
Yeah, I was a little surprised at that myself. I think that's a conflict of interest. I know the only thing I could say is, I mean, I would never sue this town. I mean, I consider this my town. I was born and raised here, and hopefully I'll die here. Not in the near future, though.
Yeah, but I would think you have just as much of an interest in doing well for the town as anybody else does.
I do. I mean, I want to see it prosper, you know, and I hate to see all this negativism that comes down the pike constantly. You know, it's just it doesn't serve any good purpose for anyone involved.
Do your attorneys think that George could win any of his claims that are still outstanding?
None. Not a single one.
So he's still suing and spending money and costing money to the town when he doesn't have much of a chance for success.
Right.
And it seems that this has become a political issue by the Democrats, and it's kind of using poor George as a pawn in the game, and a few other people as well, and I think that's kind of sad. Do you think he will drop the lawsuit if he wins a seat on the Board of Selectmen?
You know, it's hard to say, Brian. Here again, I saw a clip of a show recently where he said that he would drop the lawsuit if he was elected, and I was kind of perplexed by that comment. You know, it seemed to say that, you know, if you don't vote for me, I'm going to sue you. And then I think he recanted that, if I'm not mistaken, afterwards, and said that he hadn't made up his mind, you know, 100% one way or another. So
it seems to me like that's just another question of changing your mind. One week you're going to drop the lawsuit, the next week you're not. I mean, it's not. I think this has kind of been a pattern with these Democratic candidates. That's one of the reasons I'm not backing any this time around. I just don't think the timing is right for that. I'm concerned also that he reported that he may or may not drop from his seat on the Board of Selectmen if elected. He may resign his seat on the Board of Selectmen and perhaps go back to planning and zoning.
Well, I think that was his original thought or plan, because there was an article in the paper I do remember reading, it was quite a while ago, that he had absolutely no interest in running for the Board of Selectmen. He said himself that he was a P&Z man. So, you know, I've heard the same scuttlebutt that, you know, he's hoping to win his election for the Board of Selectmen and hope to win something from the lawsuit, and then, you know, I guess he figures he'd have a choice that he could go wherever. My only problem is, you know, I don't know, if that scenario were to come true, I don't know who they would put on the Board of Selectmen from the Democratic slate.
Well, let's hope they don't put on one of the losers in this election, or even one of the losers in this election and the last election, because I don't think that would be good for the town. It's always good for us to elect, when we elect people, to see them stay in the job, and it's kind of a bit unethical not to stay in the job unless you have some illness or, you know, some real problem.
I agree with you 100%, you know, and I think that, you know, and there was no personality conflicts here. I mean, you know, don't take this the wrong way, Brian, but I mean, if you were the planning and zoning chair and, you know, you pulled these same shenanigans, I'm afraid I'd have to show you the door, too.
Sure. I don't play shenanigans, of course, but I have been removed from positions over time because people bought my company or bought the company I was with, and they had somebody they'd rather take a different approach, and maybe I cost too much to them or whatever, but I always said, thank you very much. Let's work out an exit strategy, and I'll go off and find a better job than this one. It seems to me a tremendous waste of energy and money and quite a diversion to be even discussing this around an election during one of the greatest recessions that we've had in many, many years.
Well, I agree with you on that, too. I think it's a well-known fact, and, you know, everyone knows that there are much more important issues than that are hanging over the heads of the taxpayers here in town. And, you know, sometimes it's hard to focus, but like I said, I agree with you 100% that I think there's many, many, many more issues that need to be addressed than, you know, his his status on the P&Z.
Okay, well, we have plenty of other issues to talk about, so we'll move on now. And it looks like you have been very successful with your first two promises. Thank you very much for that. I'm sure the town's happy about that. Well, people often ask me, what did they accomplish in the last 2 years? And, of course, that's what we're going to be talking more about tonight, too. What about the third? The Republican team promised to promote cooperation between the town and school leaders in an attempt to save some costs.
Well, Brian, as you know, the schools make up about 65% of our budget, and our test scores are far from competitive. We've also received a lot of money from the state, and that's beginning to level off. The ECS money is the same as it was last year, and it's very important that the school costs are managed very carefully, and we receive the greatest value for our money.
I've always been very concerned here over the last few years that we've had like 3 financial directors in the school system just in the last 3 or 4 years, and the latest one is relatively new. I'm kind of concerned about that. We've also had a couple different superintendents over the last 4 years or so. And what I want to do now is I want to show some K through 8 test scores. We won't show too much of them, but I'd like to know what you think of them. We have about 5 slides here that we'll put up for a few seconds apiece, and maybe you can comment a little bit on each one of them.
Well, as you can see, I believe they're up now. As you can see, the red line represents the town, and the blue line is the state, and we are upwards of 20 points below on some of these test scores. And I mean, I think they're absolutely devastating to the town. I mean, this is something that needs to be corrected immediately. Unfortunately, Hinsdale School is in what they consider a warning status, having failed to meet No Child Left Behind for 2 years running now. But it's in everything. It's in reading, it's in writing, it's in math, and this is something that is absolutely unacceptable as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, I'd like to ask you, since we've now dealt with the test scores, what else can you say about what you're doing to help with these test scores, and what benefit are they to the town of Winchester?
Well, they obviously need to be improved. If we have the slightest inclination of attracting, more taxpayers and jobs that provide businesses in this town, I mean, that's one of the first things that people look for when they move to a town is, what kind of school system do they have for their children? So I think it's absolutely imperative that, if we want to improve our local economy, we need to improve our local schools. And, this needs to be done hand in hand. Since the beginning of our administration, we've been trying to work closely with the schools concerning their costs. The selectmen, according to our town charter, can only approve increases or reduction of the Board of Education budget bottom line. We have no control over the individual line items. And our first step was to ask the new town manager, Keith Robbins, and the town's finance director, Henry Centrella, to spend enough time with the superintendent and the new school finance director of the K through 8 program to help them get their books in order and to have some sort of synchronization with our monthly reporting procedures. So, we knew month by month where they stood. And we've made a lot of progress in that direction, but there's still more that needs to be made. In the beginning, early going, we were getting them, in a fairly timely manner. However, they seem to drop off the last 3 or 4 months of school. And I'd just like to add a little something here on our recent town meeting that we had to take care of some budget woes. We waited and waited and waited for the Board of Education to get back to us on whether they had overexpended money or not. The last report that we received in August stated that they were $15,000 over budget. However, to try to get a final number that we could go before we had our meeting, we never heard back from them, other than that they were working on it. And Friday evening, this past Friday, at around 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Henry Centrella called me at home and said that he had just received via email from the finance director on the Board of Education that they had a surplus of 29 cents. and it posed some questions to Henry and myself that, how this was capable. That, when the last word that we had from them, that they were $15,000 over budget, and now they were 29 cents to the good. So, they will be audited. Unfortunately, that'll probably be 2 or 3 months from now. But I think there's more work that needs to be done on that front. Initially, we tried for a budget increase for both the town and the education budgets, but we ran into a lot of resistance. That was noted through the 5 failures to pass the proposed 08-09 budget at the town referendums. Also, early on in our administration, the town experienced an average of 40% revaluation increase from many of the taxpayers in some of our areas, namely the Highland Lake region and the Winchester areas. And that was just more troublesome to our taxpayers. But that's a fact of life, and these revals occur. But during the elongated budgeting process, we experienced the worst recession since the Great Depression. I mentioned that earlier. And as a result of that, we did agree to a 0 increase budget for 2 years in a row. And both of those passed on the first time that they were proposed. To get to these numbers, though, we were forced to make many, many very difficult decisions. And we had to introduce many cost-saving initiatives that had not been done in the past during more prosperous years. For example, we introduced an early retirement plan. We did not replace retiring or departing employees where it was practical. We laid off some employees, or we kept them at part-time. We are in the process of introducing a new retained leave and sick time policy, which is another issue that was let to run rampant, unfortunately, so that these issues can more easily be funded. The Board of Education laid off personnel and introduced a new school busing practice, and also a redistricting school consolidation plan. And this is designed to save approximately $1 million or more in the next few years. And we also provided money, much needed money I should add, in the budget to fix some of the long overdue audit recommendations concerning our town computer system and cross-training efficiencies to help the finance department run more smoothly at Town Hall.
I think that's going to be a major jump for our town in getting that financial area computerized properly with the right software and hardware. There's a long way to go to get it integrated, of course, with the school system and other things. But I see that so far we've discussed some interesting things. Number one, you've abandoned the previous administration's $57 million, including $13 million in interest, 20-year bond package. You've proposed 2 consecutive 0 increase budgets, and they were approved. You began to rationalize town spending practices that may have been long overdue. Certainly were long overdue. You forced the Board of Education to resolve its monthly reporting procedures and format, as the school auditors have recommended over many years. You've rationalized the use of the school facilities and the school busing services. It may still need a little bit of tinkering, but it's getting a lot better and a lot more efficient. And you've still managed to finish the Pearson Middle School OCR repairs on time and at half the original projected cost without a bond package during the largest recession since the Great Depression. Every department had to tighten their belt, the same as the taxpayers have had to do. Sounds pretty much like running as a business to me.
Yes, that's true. But, there's still plenty of work remaining. And because we are still expecting a tight budget over the next few years, we expect revenue to be neutral in the next year or two, perhaps more. And we're going to need, I think, a few close to 0 budget increases over the next few years to continue for us to manage our money wisely by becoming more efficient. We absolutely need to find a way to do more with less. The selectmen, as the Board of Finance, the town manager, and the Board of Education may continue to seek more efficient ways of operating as they always do. Along with the EDC, we need to continue to search for more sources of profitable additional tax revenue and cost-cutting options.
Well, it looks like the recession has been a mixed blessing for this town. because out of necessity, it has forced us to make the difficult management decisions that we did not seem capable of making during the prosperous years of past administrations. It looks like we are now discussing your last campaign promise to be fiscally responsible.
Well, that's correct. You know, now is not it's not the time to delay necessary profitable revenue-producing projects and decisions, and it's not the time to reintroduce unnecessary big bond packages or an unnecessary amount of management bureaucracy into the overall system. You know, we don't want to run the town like the schools. We want to run the schools like the town. And I think the taxpayers and the Taxpayers Association would agree with me wholeheartedly. It's time to consolidate and integrate our town and school operations wherever practical, especially the finance departments. Some charter changes may be necessary to achieve this, and more cooperation and teamwork between the Board of Ed and the Gilbert School is an absolute must. I can't strive that point enough. I had an opportunity to talk to a class at Gilbert School just a few days ago, and I tried to reinforce that, you know, I am wholeheartedly 100% behind the Gilbert School. I was during this reconfiguration plan, and I strove, unfortunately I was in the losing side of this one, that, you know, they look into sending 7th and 8th grade students to Gilbert. I think that it's a possible, you know, a possibility. They can do this if they're given enough time, and I think that would be good for the students. I think they would get a better learning education there. I also think that it would lower the cost per pupil at Gilbert School. They have an absolute magnificent facility. It's been recently updated. They have many more things at Gilbert School than our local elementary schools have, and I just think that it was an option that was overlooked, you know, too rapidly without giving enough thought into that process.
Well, that's very interesting. We have discussed many of the overall concerns of the town and the school systems during the time remaining, which is not much. I'd like to ask you what you have done and intend to do to satisfy the specific needs of a few of the organizations in town. First, our senior citizens, to whom we owe a debt of gratitude.
Well, absolutely. As far as the senior citizens go, we immediately repaired the senior center doors that were a problem for so long. We saved the Candy Striper bus schedule from a proposed budget cut after feedback from our citizens. We resolved the senior tax discount dilemma in favor of the seniors after it had been plagued by the last administration. We also are in favor, and we fully support Fred Newman of the Winchester Housing Authority and his attempts to apply for and receive more senior housing. We definitely have a need for this, and Fred has proven this time and time again. And we also retained the senior center manager, who provides such valuable help to the seniors, and they are in dire need of it. So I'm very happy with, you know, what we've done for the senior citizens.
And how about the majority of the Highland Lake residents, not just the extreme environmentalists, the few that are there, but the average Highland Lake resident and their needs?
Well, we've funded for the past 2 years the pesticide to control the spread and growth of that undesired milfoil plants. I know I've met several times with Dick Labich, the head of the Highland Lake Watershed Association, and it's a pleasure to work with him. And we currently are continuing to implement the catch basins that were in the last bond issue. We denied a delay in the 6 to 8 foot drawdown from the 3 to 5 years until more testing is done. The testing was recommended by the limnologist in his report because we believe that there wasn't enough scientific evidence that the 8 foot drawdown every 3 years was causing serious problems at the lake. We supported the lake's many seasonal activities and will continue to do so. We balanced the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission and also the Planning and Zoning in an attempt to speed up decision making and be more homeowners and lake friendly. I know that's, you know, I've heard that a lot, that either the Planning and Zoning or even the building department sometimes, you know, they aren't as friendly and as fast moving as people would like. So, you know, we're trying to make corrections wherever possible. We were unable to sell some small town-owned lake properties to abutters, and I know you're well aware of this, Brian, but they're like 25, foot strips of land, and sometimes the homeowners would like to buy them to have a little extra land, alongside their own. But we weren't able to do this unless that we instituted a conservation easement on these properties. And it's unfortunate that the homeowners couldn't rally enough support, when this came to a town vote, and which is required. But we'll continue to try and help out the landowners as much as we can to help expand their land, their property, and also it would increase the taxes that we would receive from the town. We do believe that we've acted in the best interest of all the lake property owners and the town residents that are lake users.
One of the biggest concerns at the lake is taxes, and especially since the revaluation. And when I talk to people around the lake, and I talk to plenty of people around the lake, they're very happy with your progress. They're really happy with what you're doing and looking out after their interests. What have you done for the Winchester taxpayers and their association?
Well, once again, I think the cancellation of that $57 million ill-conceived and poorly constructed bond package was great relief to all of those taxpayers association. Excuse me. This saved a good deal of taxes for the taxpayers over the next 20 years. And, most every taxpayer was in favor of this decision, to nix this plan. Hence, I believe that's why we had, we were so fortunate in winning the majority of the election. We listened to them when they recommended loud and clear after several referendums that the taxpayers wanted a zero increase budget. And when we finally proposed a zero increase, the budget passed on the very first time. And the second year, recognizing the burden that was placed on the taxpayers from the recession, we proposed another zero increase, and it passed on the first time. So we will continue to listen to the taxpayers, as they are our partners in the business via the town hall or town budget meetings and the budget referendums, as long as we have the current town of Winchester charter.
And I agree with you. I think that we have to have a partnership there. That's in our charter. We don't have any choice, so we have to work together and do that. Now, I have a real interesting question for you. What have you done for the Gilbert supporters?
Well, the Republican Party is in favor of Gilbert and its existence for a long, long time to come. I believe it's a huge part of our future, and we need to have some consolidation and redistricting of the school integration plan. I think Gilbert needs to work some on its test scores and needs to help, maybe they could help improve the K-8 scores as well, because all of these children, it should be one system, K-8. They are all our children. I think with some smart planning together, it may be possible to move some of the lower grades, namely the 7th and 8th grade, as I stated earlier, and that may drop the cost, the per pupil cost, and increase the test scores substantially by utilizing the space in the facilities at the Gilbert School. And this would also balance the amount of the remaining children between the K-8 schools, and the Gilbert School hopefully could help make this an easier thing to manage. We would also like to see more town representation on the Gilbert School Board to make these communications more harmonious.
And what about K-8 and its PTOs?
Well, into the additions of the things that we already mentioned at Pearson Middle School, the Bachelor and Hinsdale, we will continue to encourage them to reduce and balance the cost and continue with their monthly reporting, financial reportings, and we need to have them improve the CMT scores. And I think that trying to utilize Gilbert once again, they could help in this area. They're already working with less, but it seems that there is plenty of room for some more efficient moves on their part. They have moved their headquarters from some rental property on Elm Street up to the Bachelor School, and reportedly that was going to save about $30,000 a year. That was a good move. The Republican Party is losing at least one member on the Board of Ed. Karen Beadle has chosen to run for the Board of Selectmen. But we are running one candidate, Carol Palumba, and we are cross-endorsing another candidate, Democratic hopeful Kathleen O'Brien, who served on the board previously as a chairman. And In addition, we are running 2 candidates on the Board of Selectmen that were previously on the Board of Education, namely Karen Beadle and Ray Neal. And Ray has been elected to the Board of Education on 2 separate occasions.
I watched their progress over the last 2 years, and they seem to be doing an excellent job in a very difficult situation. I'm voting for all 3 Democratic candidates for the Board of Education, as well as your candidate, and I want to make sure that we don't get these. My view is that we shouldn't get these petitioners in again, because they're probably the cause of a lot of these problems not getting fixed, especially in the test score and in the business area. I still strongly think that we need a businessman to run the Board of Education. We sorely need a businessman, because we can get educators to help us with the education part, but it's tough to get a businessman to run that business and be able to keep a financial director for 10 or 20 years and work with the town financial director much closer in a symbiotic relationship than we have. Now, what have you done for the business community?
Well, most of the work for the business community is done by the Economic Development Commission, and we fully support them, and we always try to work hand in hand with them. Shortly after we were elected, the town manager and myself attended an economic development sponsored summit, and we listened to concerns of the business community. They expressed a deep interest in the land use boards, in town employees being more friendly. And we touched on this just a little bit earlier, that they're like the first line that meets these people when they come for either permits, building permits, no matter what it be. And we need to try to be as friendly as we possibly can and work with them, and because they are supporting our town, and they are bringing in much needed revenue. They were also interested in erasing the town's image as being known as raggies. Shortly after the interim town manager revived the 1999 plan for the downtown and talked to the economic development commissioners about this, they agreed that it was a worthwhile plan and began to run with it. We also began to support the EDC in its quest for some more planning funds. The selectmen, the town manager, and the EDC commissioners spend a good deal of time meeting with potential businesses and developers looking to invest in the community.
Well, that's good. I think we've talked on a lot of what you've done, and it's very, very, very good progress. A heck of a lot more than the past administration, in my view, and I was around for all that. What are your biggest regrets?
Well, I think, unfortunately, as a result of the recession and the zero increased budget for the past 2 years in a row, we were unable to fulfill our campaign promises for a full-time recreation director, which I still think that we need. Also, a full-time building inspector and a full-time fire marshal. I think as we move forward in trying to increase revenues in town with buildings and more activities, I think these are areas that are absolutely need to be addressed. But we'll get there. It's a long, hard road, but I honestly believe that we're making some very good progress.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for picking a very strong team. The last group of people, your mates in this administration have done together with you a wonderful job in breaking through the ice here and getting things on a roll. And I think this new administration has a good balance of people with good leadership, and I'm sure you're going to make it. So good luck to you. Thank you, Mayor Fracasso, and the best of luck and success to you and your entire slate. And let's work hard and win this election.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. It was a pleasure to be here. And I appreciate very much all the hard work that you do behind the scenes for all the taxpayers in Winston. And I hope that everyone else appreciates it as much as I do.
Thank you. About 4 minutes. Okay, this is my final program. I'm going to say, au revoir, not adieu. And I think you should all vote for the Republican candidates. I also would like to see you vote for Jay Buttigieg and Russell Dutton Buckner if these Republicans are elected, because I think they'll work well with them. Not sure how well they'll work with the Democrats, but thanks for watching over the years, and maybe we will meet again in the future.